Are you a lifelong fan of General Hospital?
Are you a new fan who wants to know more about the history of the show?
Do you enjoy talking about the show with others?
Do you find yourself yelling at the TV?
Is your self-care an hour a day in Port Charles?
If so, we invite you to join hosts
Amanda Kimmel
and Shannon Coach at the place where all the hidden conversations take place and secrets are revealed.
Meet us at Pier 54,
a General Hospital fan podcast.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the Port Charles 411, Lucky Spencer Part 48, Lucky and Liz Part 39. Today we are picking up on June 10th and we will go through July 27th, 2011. We ended last episode where during the episode, the family, the Spencers, had an intervention for Luke, and he refused to admit that he had a drinking problem and refused to go to rehab. And so he decided to leave town instead. And Siobhan and Lucky got married. I think that was really it. Those are kind of like the two big, kind of where we left off, right?
Yep.
Starting to kind of all run together for me. But so we pick up where, and Siobhan was, because Lucky wanted to go find Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And Siobhan said that she would go with him. So that's kind of where we're picking up, because Lucky told Siobhan more about Luke's past, admitting that his father had been a mean drunk, and meaning his grandfather, like Luke's father.
Right.
Who had abandoned the family when Luke was still a child. Luke and Bobby had survived by running off to live with their Aunt Ruby in Florida, who kept a roof over their heads by running a brothel. It was to that same brothel years later and under new management that Lucky tracked his father after Luke's drinking spun further out of control. Why did I think that the brothel was closed? I thought that Aunt Ruby closed it.
I thought so too.
Okay. But Lucky found him there. So Lucky confessed to Siobhan that he hadn't been as patient with Luke's demons as he should have been, but he insisted he had never once doubted Luke's love for him. Siobhan reminded him that Luke's devastation over Jake's death was proof of how much he cared. She warned Lucky not to approach him with the whole family, saying that Luke would see it as an ambush. Instead, she urged Lucky to face him one-on-one. When Lucky arrived in Luke's room, his father met him with sarcasm, joking about Lucky's detective skills and introducing the woman he was with. Lucky dismissed her so he could talk to Luke alone, but Luke immediately tried to push him away. He told Lucky to walk away, repeating that he had always taught him how to count his losses. Lucky pushed back, reminding him that Luke had also taught him when to stand his ground, and for once Lucky admitted he had been wrong in how he tried to help, wrong in making Luke feel like he was being punished instead of supported. I feel like the point of the intervention is to help somebody feel supported.
Right.
And they all said like how much they loved him and they just wanted him to get better. Lucky apologized and told his father how much he needed him, not just for himself, but for Lulu, Ethan, and Tracy as well. Luke rejected the idea. He insisted he wasn't a hero, never wanted to be a father, and had no interest in returning to a family or a home. To him, the brothel reflected who he truly was, the hustle, the con, the lessons learned in surviving. He described watching Bobby walk down the hallways as a teenager to servicemen and said that had shaped how he saw the world. Luke said he had always wanted freedom to drink, cheat, and steal, and that he only veered off track when he fell for Laura. He told Lucky that Jake's death had pushed him beyond redemption, that killing a child stripped him of any right to be saved. He said if Lucky wanted a father, he would have to become one for himself. Devastated, Lucky tried one last time, insisting his love was unconditional, but Luke held his ground. As Lucky left the room, Luke's tears finally broke through the mask he had been trying to hold. On the flight home, Lucky told Siobhan that Luke was done with him and the entire Spencer family. He remembered early years on the road when Luke had seemed the happiest, free and alive, before Laura fell in love with the house in Port Charles. Lucky said Luke had never stopped calling it a cage, and that it suffocated his spirit, and that's how he was starting to feel the same way himself. Siobhan reminded him that Luke's grief and drinking made him say extreme things he might not even believe, but Lucky felt that his father meant every word. Later, Luke confided to Lupe, I'm assuming that's the woman that was in the room, that he feared he had become like his own father. He admitted that when Lucky was born, he was shocked by how much he loved his son. That love came not because Lucky reminded him of himself, but because Lucky was everything he was not. See? Lucky is everything Luke was not.
Right.
Lupe gently slipped a gun from Luke's hand and asked him to talk about Lucky. Oh, okay, so that wasn't there. I guess Luke had a gun and might have been in danger of self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
Luke said his son was luminous, carrying a light inside him made of courage and love. He admitted that he had been afraid of failing as a father, so he focused on teaching Lucky survival, how to take a punch, throw one, and keep going no matter what. Luke said it had all ended the night he got behind the wheel and killed Jake. He didn't know if it was arrogance or carelessness, but he knew it forced Lucky to forgive the unforgivable. Luke told Lupe that when Lucky had come to him with his heart open, he had stomped on it because the only gift he had left to give was setting his son free. He said he had given Lucky permission to hate him as much as Luke would always love Lucky. While jogging, Lulu spotted Lucky standing on the front porch of their mother's house. So Lucky's back in town. She stopped to ask where Luke was, and Lucky surprised her by bringing up their grandfather, Tim Spencer. Lulu admitted she knew little, so Lucky told her about Tim's drinking and the abusive childhood Luke and Bobby had survived. Lulu insisted their father was nothing like Tim, but Lucky disagreed, saying he had seen a side of Luke he had never before. When Lulu pushed for answers, Lucky revealed Luke was living in a brothel in Jacksonville, the same place he and Bobby had once called home with Aunt Ruby. Lucky explained it was the only home Luke had ever truly known, and he confessed it was hard to see because he couldn't stop imagining what it would have been like if he and Lulu had grown up there themselves. I thought that Luke really loved Canada, though. I thought that he always said that like his favorite time was when they ran the Triple L diner.
Yep.
Up until this point, like that's the impression I was always under.
Maybe that's sober Luke and this is drunk Luke.
Okay. Lucky later found Ethan at the casino playing cards and told him that Luke had no intention of coming back. Ethan asked him to stay so they could break the news to Lulu together, but Lucky said she already knew. Ethan wasn't surprised Lulu had taken it badly, and the conversation briefly shifted to Ethan's troubles with Maya before returning to their father. Lucky was convinced Luke wanted nothing more to do with them. Ethan suggested his relationship with Luke might give him an edge since they had met as adults, but Lucky disagreed. He pointed out that Ethan had grown up with a safe, normal childhood, while Luke had never been allowed to be a child at all. From an early age, Luke had been forced to lie, steal, and con while watching his sister work as a prostitute. That darkness, Lucky said, had defined their father and left him believing he couldn't be saved. Lulu showed up at the casino soon after and quickly realized that Ethan already knew. Ethan was sure that, and the casino is the Haunted Star.
Mm-hmm.
Ethan was sure Luke would eventually come around, but Lucky stunned them both by admitting Luke had told them that killing Jake had been liberating, that it freed him from being a father. Lulu and Ethan were shaken, but Lucky insisted they had to accept the truth. The man they had once counted on was gone. Later, when they found Lucky again on the porch of the Spencer's house, he explained he was looking at it through Luke's eyes. To Luke, the house had always been suffocating. Lucky reminded them that their parents' marriage had fallen apart inside those walls, and so had his with Liz. He admitted that Luke had often talked about wanting the place burnt to the ground. Back at the Spencer house, Lulu told Dante that she thought Lucky had developed a fixation on repeating Luke's old words and wanting it torched. Dante asked if she thought Lucky might actually do something, but Lulu said she wasn't in a position to judge or given her own recent choices, refusing Paris, quitting her job, and asking Nikolas for money. She admitted Lucky was in pain, but argued that all of them had played a role in driving Luke away. Dante suggested Lucky's bitterness towards the house was really a way to shift blame because it wasn't the house that had failed him, it was Luke.
Siobhan was relieved when Lucky finally came home, admitting that she had baked rosemary cookies because of an old wives' tale about ensuring someone's safe return. I've never heard of rosemary cookies, but okay.
Neither have I.
Like as I'm reading it, I'm stumbling over this, not because I can't read the words, but I have never heard of that before. Like it must be wrong, but nope, that's what it says. Rosemary cookies to ensure someone's safe return. All right.
It's a shortbread, and the recipe that I found is a lemon rosemary butter cookie.
Oh, that does sound good. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thanks, Siobhan, for the cooking tips.
We need to add that to our cookbook.
Oh, yes. Perfect. Lucky explained he had been driving around trying to take his mind off Luke, though it was clear it hadn't helped. Later, as she brought him dinner, Lucky sat fiddling with Luke's cigar lighter, the same one he had confiscated after Luke tried to torch the casino. Siobhan reminded him of the good memories they had with Luke, but Lucky pressed her about whether she and his father had spoken. She admitted Luke said Lucky was chained to the past and needed to break free. Maxie later dropped by and clashed with Siobhan, insisting the truth about Aiden's paternity would change everything. Siobhan pushed back, saying it wasn't the time because Lucky was already under too much pressure with Luke's drinking and disappearance. Maxie argued she didn't understand Lucky as well as she thought. When Nikolas arrived, Maxie doubled down on her belief that Lucky needed Liz and the boys, frustrating both Siobhan and Nikolas. After Maxie left, Nikolas admitted fatherhood had saved him from his own darkness, and he didn't know how Luke could abandon Lucky. Siobhan worried Lucky was too hurt to lean on her, while Nikolas reminded her that losing a child cut deeper than anything else. Obviously, but how does Nikolas know that?
Right.
Like, it says it like he knows the feeling. At the piers, Lucky and Liz remembered a time they had slept under them during his first rift with Luke. Liz reminded him that he and his father had once found their way back, but Lucky doubted it would happen again. He described finding Luke in a brothel, begging him to come home, only to be pushed away. When Liz pressed, Lucky revealed the cruelest part. Luke had said killing Jake had been liberating because it freed him to walk away. Liz was shaken, admitting she was trying hard not to blame Luke, but she hated how much it hurt Lucky. He regretted pushing so hard and blamed himself, but Liz refused to let him take on guilt that wasn't his. Liz confided in Jason, explaining how much Lucky was blaming himself for both Luke's absence and Jake's death. Jason reminded her Lucky hadn't failed Jake, but Liz argued Jason's forgiveness might help ease Lucky's guilt. Jason told her there was nothing to forgive and pointed out that Liz was still the one person who truly understood Lucky. Liz admitted it wasn't that simple, worrying she might be too late to help him. Meanwhile, Maxie confided in Dante that Lucky was talking strangely and seemed close to breaking. Dante wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, but Maxie insisted she knew the signs of someone heading down a dangerous road. She feared he might relapse, especially with Luke cutting ties. Dante admitted she might be right. Lucky's turmoil came to a head when he stood on the porch of the Spencer house, opening and closing Luke's lighter. Slowly, he poured gasoline around the house and set it on fire. Dante arrived just as the flame caught, shocked when Lucky calmly admitted he had burned the place down as a farewell to Luke. Dante warned him it was arson and could cost him his badge, but Lucky was fixated on watching the house burn, convinced Luke would have approved. Dante dragged him to the car only for both men to hear a scream. Siobhan had come looking for Lucky and seeing the fire rushed inside. Hearing her cry out, Lucky bolted from the car and carried her unconscious body out of the flames. Dante sped them to General Hospital, where doctors stabilized her and prepared for surgery. As Dante stood by, Mac called demanding answers, accusing him of covering for someone at the fire scene. Lucky stayed with Siobhan in the pre-op area as the medical team readied the OR, his hands fidgeting as he tried to process everything that had happened. He admitted to her that he was sorry for all of it, especially for taking her for granted and for letting his impulses put them both in danger. He confessed that setting the fire had been pointless and selfish. The thought that Siobhan had followed him into the burning house to save him had never crossed his mind in that moment. Lucky told her he didn't understand why she cared about him so much when he hadn't shown her the love she deserved. He begged her to hold on, to fight through her injuries, and kissed her forehead, promising that he would be waiting for her when she woke. He admitted that he wished he had been capable of loving her the way she deserved. Meanwhile, Liz sought out Jason to talk about Lucky. She explained the emotional cliff he had been on ever since Luke's latest betrayal and how his father's drinking, abandonment, and cruelty had left Lucky in freefall. Jason questioned why Liz wasn't furious at Luke for killing Jake while drunk, but Liz explained that she had to protect Luke from herself. She didn't want to pile more guilt onto someone who was already drowning in it. Liz emphasized that Luke had said terrible things to Lucky, and her concern was keeping her husband's heart from hardening entirely. That wasn't her husband at the time, right? So her ex-husband's heart hardening?
When Jake died.
Yes. Okay.
Right? That's what they're referencing, right? Is when Jake died. Or were they talking about the affair?
I think they were talking about when Jake died, but when Jake died, that wasn't her husband. It was
right.
Ex-husband. Jason told her that her voice would reach Lucky better than his. They reflected on the mistakes and heartbreaks that had led them here, remembering Jake and the choices that had kept him alive, and reaffirming that even with all the consequences, their love for Jake guided their decision. Liz left to join the OR, carrying both the weight of worry and the determination to help Lucky. At the hospital, tensions erupted when Lisa appeared in the lobby with a gun. She created an immediate lockdown situation. Lucky tried to react, reaching for his weapon, but Lisa had him distracted, forcing him into the role of negotiating and tracking the situation. Spinelli tried to intervene only to be shot, increasing the pressure on Lucky to think clearly and manage the threat. He quickly assessed the locked system, booted up the override program, and tried to anticipate the code. After a tense moment, he realized Jake's birthday was the key, and he successfully ended the lockdown. While Lucky handled the technical side, Jason and Dante coordinated a plan to enter the building from the roof, arguing with Ronnie over the risks versus saving the hostages. Amid the lockdown chaos, Liz was called into the OR to assist with Siobhan's surgery, which is 100% not okay because of their relationship with each other, but okay. A medical
There's the
error.
fact that every time there's a lockdown every time someone goes into surgery.
Right.
We just dealt with this when Jake was in surgery, and there was it was Jake was in surgery, right? And that's when Aiden was kidnapped,
right?
Because there was a lockdown then. But
yep, lots of lockdowns.
Jake in surgery? I think it was.
Yeah, he was getting ready for surgery. Because wasn't that how they kind of explained that Jake wasn't really dead whenever Helena brought him back? Was like that switcheroo time?
I forget.
I think so.
So much craziness.
Right. A medication error left Siobhan unconscious and bleeding from the brain, her condition critical. When Liz finally caught up with Lucky, she delivered the news explaining the drop in intracranial pressure and the gravity of the situation. Lucky went to Siobhan's bedside, speaking about Ireland and how music seemed to arise naturally from the land, and tried to comfort her in whispers she couldn't hear. He admitted he still didn't understand why she had stayed with him through all the danger and heartbreak. The realization was overwhelming, and he abruptly walked out. Downstairs, Matt confronted him, insisting he return to help Dante manage the crisis, but Lucky refused. He felt he couldn't do both. He needed to step away from the chaos and the responsibilities weighing on him. Mac warned that walking away could mean turning in his badge, but Lucky kept moving, focused on his own thoughts while the hospital continued to manage the lockdown and its aftermath.
I feel like he kind of gets a pass because his wife's
right.
Surgery.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a crisis, maybe the rules are different, but when your wife's in surgery, I don't think that your boss, whether you're a cop or anything else, is like, no, hey, get back here, do your job.
Right. Especially where she hadn't even come to yet. So It's not like she was out of surgery, but she wasn't waking up. Right. So, yeah. Lucky was tense at the Haunted Star, staring at a drink when Liz arrived, telling him Mac needed him at the hospital. Lucky admitted he might be done as a cop and wondered if Liz knew how Siobhan had been hurt. Okay, so if he's not going to stay next to her, he shouldn't be going to the Haunted Star to drink.
No.
He explained that he had set fire to the Charles Street house, a symbol of lost dreams, his parents' marriage and his own. Liz reminded him the house wasn't to blame and told him his sons needed him. Lucky froze when she confirmed, he's Aiden's father. The news hit him hard. Yup. Wow, I should have found this clip. I've never watched this.
Oh, wow.
Have you?
Well, the first time around, yeah.
I didn't. He struggled to process it, warning Liz that lies wouldn't stop him from drinking. Liz assured him it wasn't a lie and explained that why she had ordered a third paternity test. Aiden resembled Nikolas, but with Lucky and Nikolas sharing a mother, it wasn't definitive. Helena had been in town during the previous tests, so the results could have been manipulated. Lucky questioned what Liz wanted from him and why she had waited. He remembered how she had let him believe he was Jake's father for months before revealing the truth and felt blindsided that she kept Aiden's paternity a secret for so long. Liz admitted she wanted Aiden to be his son, but had never imagined it would follow Jake's death. She also hadn't wanted to disrupt the fragile peace between Lucky and Nikolas.
Okay.
Girl, at some point, you're going to have to. So...
And I think you should have been more concerned about that like a couple months ago when you were hooking up with both of them than right now.
Maybe. Lucky finally understood why Liz had been at the courthouse on his wedding day. She had intended to tell him the truth then, but hadn't wanted to make him feel obligated. Lucky's thoughts turned to Siobhan, who was in surgery. He admitted he felt no better than Luke, recalling the devastating moment he had told Luke that he had been responsible for Jake's death. He remembered seeing Luke drink in despair, realizing Jake's death had been caused by his father's drinking, and recognized that since then he had been running from the pain just as Luke had. Lucky confessed that he had tried to escape his grief in a bottle. Liz reassured him that he was stronger than Luke and that she believed in him. He pushed the alcohol aside and reached for her hand, acknowledging that she had saved him, promising he would try not to let her down. At the hospital, Lucky sat at Siobhan's bedside. She slowly opened her eyes, recognizing him as her husband, and explained that she had run into the burning house, fearing he was trapped. Lucky confessed that he had started the fire and that he and Dante had rushed in to rescue her after hearing her screams. He promised to be the husband that she deserved. Siobhan revealed that she had known about Aiden and that the truth hadn't been hers to tell. Lucky admitted that he had just recently learned that he was Aiden's father and was stunned to know that Siobhan had known before him. She told him Liz would be informing Nikolas soon. Why did she tell him that Liz was going to tell Nikolas soon, but she didn't know if he was going to tell...
Right. Maybe she just assumed since... Or did Liz say that? Like, whenever Siobhan saw the envelope, did Liz realize that she had seen the envelope and say, I'm going to tell them all soon, I just don't know when?
I think she might have even specifically said Nikolas.
Maybe.
Lucky insisted that knowing he was Aiden's father didn't change his commitment to Siobhan, though she reminded him that a child was a bigger priority than a marriage made for convenience. Meanwhile, the aftermath of the Charles Street fire continued to unfold. At the Spencer house, Ronnie suspected that Dante knew more than he was admitting about the fire. Lulu arrived and saw the burned-out shell of a home she had grown up in. Dante assured her that he had done all he could to save it, but Lulu admitted that maybe its destruction was for the best. She reflected on the memories she and Lucky had shared in the house, but acknowledged that Lucky had been determined to destroy it all. Ronnie revealed that the fire had been arson and that Lucky was the prime suspect, warning Dante not to risk his badge protecting him. Back at the Haunted Star, Lulu noticed a bottle of scotch on the bar and worried that Lucky might have relapsed, thinking that the fire and the search for Luke could have triggered him. Tracy reminded Lulu that she couldn't save Lucky and that he had to navigate his own struggles, but Lulu insisted she was fine despite her worries. Lucky stayed at Siobhan's bedside, still trying to make sense of everything, the fire, her injuries, and now the revelation about Aiden. She insisted he take a moment to process all of it, even as he struggled with guilt over almost getting her killed. Lucky admitted that Liz had found him at the Haunted Star on the verge of drinking, and Siobhan understood why he had been tempted. She reassured him that it wouldn't have solved anything and appreciated that Liz had stopped him. Lucky confessed that learning the truth about Aiden's paternity had also kept him from relapsing. Seeing Aiden with Franco's mother had triggered a deep desire to claim him as his own, and now knowing he truly was Aiden's father gave him a reason to stay present. Siobhan reminded Lucky that loving Aiden didn't diminish his love for Cam or Jake, but Lucky realized he saw more of himself in Aiden. At first he had doubted Liz's claim, but once he accepted it, he couldn't risk slipping into the habits he had seen in Luke. Aiden's future mattered in him a way that made him fight for his sobriety. Siobhan encouraged him to be the example Aiden would need if he ever struggled, reminding him that everyone stumbles, but it's how you rise that counts. Meanwhile, Liz faced the challenge of telling Nikolas. At Windermere, she revealed that Aiden was Lucky's son, not Nikolas's. Nikolas was stunned and immediately skeptical, remembering how Liz had previously misled everyone about Jake's paternity. He argued that she could have tampered with the test, suspecting her motives were to protect Lucky from drinking again. Liz explained she had waited because she didn't want to disrupt the fragile peace between the brothers. After seeing Lucky at the Haunted Star, she knew he needed the truth. Nikolas struggled with the news, insisting he wouldn't allow Aiden to be treated as a replacement for Jake, and stormed out, leaving Liz full of regret but understanding his need to process it. Lucky later stopped by Liz's house, determined to ensure he could assert his role as Aiden's father if Nikolas resisted acknowledging the truth. Liz reminded him that the third paternity test confirmed it, but Lucky pointed out that Nikolas still had 2 previous tests that contradicted it. He assured Liz that he would speak to Nikolas personally and try to reason with him rather than escalate into a custody battle. Sam and Jason supported Liz through the stress of revealing the truth. Sam encouraged her to breathe and let Lucky and Nikolas work things out on their own, drawing on their own experience of rebuilding trust in a complicated relationship. Liz admitted having their support helped her feel less alone in navigating the fallout. At Windermere, Lucky and Nikolas finally spoke about the fire and Siobhan's recovery. Lucky appreciated Nikolas's support and acknowledged that his grief had driven him to set the fire. When the conversation turned to Aiden, Lucky admitted it hadn't been fair for Nikolas to learn that he wasn't his father. Nikolas reminded Lucky of Liz's history of lies about Jake's paternity and refusing to accept her claims about Aiden. Lucky countered that Helena could have tampered with the test, but Nikolas refused to allow another, not wanting to subject Aiden to further testing. Lucky left, confident that Nikolas would eventually recognize the truth, while Liz hoped for a smoother resolution. Lucky noticed in Nikolas's eyes that he had already knew more than he let on, and moving forward would require honesty, patience, and commitment of both fathers in Aiden's life. Back at the hospital, Lucky remained by Siobhan's bedside, reflecting on the responsibilities ahead. He was determined to be there for her, for Aiden, and for himself, embracing his role as a father and a husband while keeping his sobriety intact, knowing that Liz's careful timing had prevented a relapse and allowed him to face the challenges ahead with clarity.
Lucky confronted Nikolas at Windermere after Nikolas had made arrangements to fly to Zurich with Spencer and Aiden. Nikolas insisted Liz had lied about Aiden's paternity and questioned how Lucky could trust her. Lucky reminded him of his own experience with Jake, including navigating paternity revelations and custody challenges. Nikolas argued that their situations were different because Lucky had been allowed to raise Jake, and Lucky pointed out that he understood what it was like to face challenges over a child's custody. They discussed the ways their upbringing had shaped them, including Nikolas's childhood in Russia and Greece. Lucky, curious, asked why Nikolas never had an accent, and Nikolas grinned, shifting into a Russian accent for a moment, then said, "Who says I haven't been using one the whole time?" Nikolas admitted he loved Lucky, but could not acknowledge what he viewed as a lie. He explained that his decision to leave Port Charles with Spencer and Aiden was shaped by his desire to prevent Aiden from experiencing the custody battle that had marked his own childhood, referencing Emily's guidance even after her death. Lucky and Liz raced to intercept Nikolas when they realized he planned to leave. At Liz's house, they found Nikolas and Aiden waiting. Nikolas handed Aiden to Lucky, but clarified that he did not believe Aiden was Lucky's son. They went over details of Aiden's birth, including the near choice of the name Buzz, and discussed arrangements for Norma to stay on as Aiden's nanny in Zurich. Lucky pressed Nikolas about his reasoning and the impact of past betrayals on their relationship. They reflected on how far their bond had come from early distrust to a brotherly connection that had survived multiple conflicts. Lucky noted that Nikolas's actions weren't simply betrayal, but tied to grief and patterns from his past. And Nikolas admitted he had thought he was in love with Liz, but realized he had been chasing the dream he lost when Emily died. They shared a long hug before Nikolas left, the conversation tracing their shared history, the present challenges, and the endurance of their relationship. At the hospital, Lucky dealt with another issue when Siobhan experienced a sudden drop in blood pressure during surgery. Liz had been the nurse administering the medication, and an investigation was underway to determine the cause. Patrick and Robin reviewed the surgical team, noting that human error was likely the factor, while Lucky observed and supported Liz as they clarified the situation. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Hayes, had given the first dose, and Liz had administered the remainder. Lucky's week was full, juggling family challenges and hospital drama. It started at the airport where he saw Spencer getting ready for a trip with Nikolas. Nikolas adjusted Spencer's backpack, asking if he was ready, then hugged him before they headed to the plane. Telling him he loved him, Helena was nearby, quietly watching the father and son as they walked away. Later, Lucky returned home and was caught off guard when he found Helena sitting on the sofa with Aiden on her lap. She immediately started in, claiming Aiden wasn't Lucky's son and insisting that Liz had faked the latest paternity test. Lucky stayed calm, firmly took Aiden, and brought him safely to the nanny upstairs with Cameron. Helena continued to argue, insulting both Liz and Siobhan and making cryptic remarks about Aiden's future. But Lucky refused to engage and eventually escorted her out, insisting Aiden was his son and calling out Helena's past attempts to manipulate the family. At the same time, Liz was dealing with the fallout from Siobhan's surgery. She had accidentally given Siobhan the wrong medication, which caused her blood pressure to drop dangerously. Matt walked her through what had happened and explained that an investigation showed Liz had injected the wrong drug, not Dr. Hayes. He also reminded her that she had been under pressure returning to work so soon after Jake's death. Lucky was there for Liz, helping her process the situation and reassuring her that Siobhan would recover and that no one thought she had acted on purpose. Liz went to Siobhan to explain the mistake, and although Siobhan was startled by how close she had come to danger, she seemed relieved that Matt had acted quickly and that Liz had been honest. Meanwhile, Patrick, Robin, and Steve were navigating the review board process. Patrick worried about being forced to hang Liz out to dry, while Robin explained that she had been covering for Liz for some time, and Steve emphasized that the board needed truthful accounts from everyone. Liz approached the nurse's station after telling Siobhan the truth, and the team reassured her that they understood she had made a mistake but had acted humanely. The review board later suspended Liz for 3 months and placed a 6 months restriction on assisting in surgeries after her return. Steve received a 2-month probation for allowing her to operate during the surgery. Well, yeah, because again, she shouldn't have been there. Lucky also spent time with his children, focusing on keeping Aiden and Cameron safe and supported. After returning from a camping trip, he explained to Cam that Aiden was his son and shared the story of how they discovered the truth about Aiden's paternity. He also updated Cam on Nikolas, who had taken Spencer to Europe and Greece to visit family, and reminded Cam of his own special place in Lucky's life as his firstborn. Cam responded warmly, expressing his love for Lucky. Later, when Liz came to pick up the boys, Lucky filled her in on the trip and reflected on how it reminded him of all the good times he had shared with his father, Luke. He also reassured Liz that Cam had taken the news about Aiden's paternity well, giving them both a bit of relief. Cameron was probably like, I'm totally used to this. I never know who my brother's dads are. It's fine. It happens all the time.
Right.
Liz confided in him about Siobhan's accusations and the malpractice suit. He was stunned. He couldn't believe Siobhan would blame Liz for the operating room mix-up when he himself had caused the fire that led to her hospitalization. Lucky promised he would speak with Siobhan, and Liz reassured him that she hadn't told him about Aiden's paternity as a way to manipulate him, which Lucky accepted, trusting her intentions. Later, Lucky visited Siobhan in her hospital room, bringing flowers and taking the opportunity to talk through the situation. He mentioned that Cam already knew the truth about Aiden and reassured Siobhan that they would all remain a family, including Liz. Siobhan, however, was hesitant and referenced the malpractice suit. Lucky explained that the medication mix-up had been an accident caused by Liz returning to work too soon after Jake's death, and he reminded Siobhan that Liz's grief had been as real as his own. Siobhan countered, saying Liz's behavior was rooted in jealousy over her and Lucky's relationship, and that she had always been hurting, making Lucky feel responsible for always rescuing her. Lucky reminded her that Liz would never deliberately hurt anyone, and that he had triggered much of the chaos himself when he had set the fire that had Siobhan hospitalized. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Steve updated Patrick, Robin, and Matt on the lawsuit. He noted that Matt had been left off since he had saved Siobhan's life. Robin argued that it was unreasonable to suggest Liz had tried to kill Siobhan, though Steve acknowledged that Liz had made mistakes and hadn't been ready to return to work. Liz eavesdropping on Lucky's conversation with Siobhan, hearing him defend her and explain the mix-up was an unintentional error linked to grief. Lucky stressed the only reason the situation had escalated was his own actions, not any malice from Liz. Steve later advised Liz to step away from the hospital and take care of herself, suggesting she go home and relax, which she half-heartedly agreed to. Lucky tried to reason with Siobhan about the lawsuit, emphasizing how it could affect the boys. He told her that he and Liz were finished as a couple, but they would continue co-parenting Aiden and Cameron. Siobhan initially accused Liz of trying to manipulate Lucky, but after some thought, she decided to drop the suit, claiming it was for Lucky's benefit. Lucky later reflected with Patrick on why Liz had been eager to return to work. She had been trying to fill the emptiness left by Jake and deal with her grief while still functioning at the hospital. They also discussed Nikolas and how he had been affected by losing Aiden. Nothing that he had done was right for his own family. Lucky acknowledged that while he would miss Nikolas, it had been necessary for Aiden's sake. Once Siobhan agreed to drop the lawsuit, Lucky went to Liz to share the news. Liz was visibly relieved, and Lucky explained that removing the legal threat would allow both of them to start processing their grief from losing Jake. He also reflected on the importance of discovering that Aiden was his son and assured Liz that while this brought joy, it didn't change the complications that had existed between them.
Lucky and Liz shared a quiet moment where Liz admitted, even though she knew Lucky was married, telling him about Aiden had felt like the right thing to do. Those two things have nothing to do with each other.
Right, exactly.
At all. if she was going to admit that she still loved him and wanted to be married to him, then yes, those things you don't say.
Right.
Lucky told her that he had married Siobhan to help her stay in the country, and that after she woke up in the hospital, he had promised to be there for her. Liz said she would expect nothing less from him. Later, she ran into Lucky near the nurse's station and explained that she had just dropped Cameron off at the daycare so he could join the other kids on a trip to the zoo. Lucky and Liz reminisced about taking Jake to see the tigers, and Liz mentioned that Cam asked if Jake could see the tigers from heaven. Aww. They shared a bittersweet smile, recalling that memory together. The moment was interrupted when Siobhan arrived in a wheelchair. She greeted Liz, but the tension was noticeable. Liz quickly explained the daycare drop-off and excused herself, leaving Lucky relieved that the interaction had gone smoothly. Siobhan agreed that it could have gone much worse, and Lucky assured her that he had only accidentally bumped into Liz. At the apartment, your ex-wife works at the hospital that your current wife is staying in.
Right. Sorry, I saw you there.
Chance. At the apartment, Lucky encouraged Siobhan to rest, but she said that she wanted a few days to go to the beach. Okay. Lucky promised they could go once she fully recovered, and Siobhan teased that following him halfway around the world wasn't something she did lightly. Their conversation naturally shifted to the fire, with Lucky surprised Siobhan had blamed herself for rushing in, and Siobhan surprised he hadn't taken his own life. They discussed the house and Luke's feelings about it. Lucky explained that Luke had a habit of rewriting history, focusing on the painful times instead of happy memories, and Siobhan reflected that grief and guilt had been heavy burdens for both Luke and Lucky. Lucky reassured her that he was managing, though she remained unsure. She suggested he consider grief counseling, but Lucky argued that no one really understood what he had been through. After a brief moment of tension and apology for his outburst, Lucky reassured Siobhan that he was continuing to stay sober and taking care of himself. Their conversation moved toward planning a vacation once she received clearance from her doctor. Meanwhile, Tracy and Monica had a tense conversation at ELQ. Tracy reluctantly revealed that Jake had not been Lucky's biological son. Luke had told her right after Jake's death, and she explained that Liz, Jason, and Lucky had kept the truth quiet to protect Jake. Monica wrestled with the realization that Lucky had shared the truth selectively with family. They discussed the past, including how Liz had cared for the boys during the winter, and how small moments like noticing a hat falling off of Cam or Jake mattered. That is like the bare minimum. Liz isn't a dad. We're not going to congratulate her on remembering a hat and noticing that it fell off. As a mom, Liz is expected to have re-knit a new hat with one hand while holding the other baby.
Yep.
Please notice the sarcasm, people. Please, 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 please. Tracy and Monica reflected on the long history of paternity secrets and lies, with Monica recognizing why some mothers made choices they did, even while feeling hurt. Back at the apartment, Lucky surprised Siobhan with grilled cheese and tomato soup, sharing a calm family moment. He explained that he and Liz had hoped to get back to a routine of weekly family meals with the boys, and Siobhan encouraged him to spend time with them. Their conversation turned to the complications of their marriage. Lucky reminded her that Liz would always be a part of his life because they shared children, and Siobhan acknowledged feeling conflicted about Liz, particularly because of the surgery incident. She pressured Lucky on whether he intended to reconcile with Liz, pointing out that he had a history of trying to save people. She already asked him this, though, like in our last episode when she had said, would you have gotten back with Liz if Aiden was your son? And he said no.
Right.
Lucky, I guess now knowing though, the answer possibly could have changed. Lucky reassured her that he had no plans to rekindle the romantic relationship with Liz, though he acknowledged their shared parenting responsibilities, and the presence of Aiden meant Liz would remain in their lives. They talked about the boys, and Lucky explained how he had tried to help Cam understand Aiden's paternity while keeping the family bond strong. Siobhan admitted that she never expected herself to settle down, but her immigration issue had pushed her into marriage, and Lucky reminded her their relationship had grown beyond those practical concerns. They discussed the past, including Lucky's relationship with Liz and his father, Luke, and how grief and unresolved emotions had influenced his decisions. Lucky explained that Luke's drinking and attempts to rewrite the past had made things more complicated, and Siobhan acknowledged how challenging it had been for Lucky to navigate all of this while caring for children and rebuilding their lives. The conversation then shifted to Liz. Siobhan accused Liz of expecting Lucky to rescue her and remind him of past incidents where Liz's actions had caused harm, including her mistakes with the surgery. Lucky explained that Liz had made an honest mistake while still grieving and insisted that her actions were never intentional. Siobhan admitted that she understood his reasoning, but she also recognized that Liz's presence would always complicate things. Lucky reassured her that he was committed to raising the boys and that he had no romantic intentions towards Liz. They talked about the challenges of balancing responsibility, grief, and loyalty to others, including Nikolas, who had been hurt by the paternity revelations and had taken Spencer to Europe. Lucky acknowledged that while it was difficult to see Nikolas leave with his son, he understood it was what Nikolas needed for himself. Siobhan expressed worry that Lucky was reassuring her about Liz just to keep her from reinstating the malpractice lawsuit. Lucky insisted Liz wasn't malicious, but Siobhan remained unconvinced. She admitted she was worried about Lucky, not just about the lawsuit, but because she feared he might spiral again. Lucky assured her that he had no intention of doing anything reckless, like setting a fire to another house, and Siobhan, believing him, gave her blessing for him to spend time with his sons. I feel like that conversation went round and round, but I mean, that does happen in real life. You cover all the subjects and then you go right back to them.
I don't like that it says that she gave him permission. Like, they're his sons. He's going to see them whether you like it or not, as it should be.
Well, it says she gave her blessing, not permission.
Sorry.
So maybe that means more of encouragement. Like the blessing is because she had repeatedly said, yeah, you need to spend time with the boys. You know, your sons are more important than your sham wedding.
Yeah.
Marriage. At the Weber residence, Liz explained to Cam that he couldn't go to his friend Cole's house for pizza because she had planned family dinner with the boys. Cam asked why Daddy couldn't come, and Liz explained that Siobhan was recovering from her injury, so Lucky needed to stay home and care for her. Later, Lucky showed up unexpectedly, and Liz admitted she hadn't expected him to join. Lucky explained that Siobhan had grown tired of him hovering, so she had sent him out. Lucky asked about the boys, and Liz told him that Aiden was napping while Cam had been taken to a neighbor's house to avoid asking any uncomfortable questions about Jake. Cam had been curious why Jake couldn't be at the family dinner. Liz admitted to Lucky that she had held it together until dropping Cam off, but felt the weight of missing Jake. Why do I feel like this means that Cam wasn't understanding
that he was gone?
That he couldn't go to his friend's house if Jake wasn't also going to be there. I feel that doesn't sound right, but at the same time, it kind of does.
Mm-hmm.
Because right before that, she said that he couldn't go to the friend's house because they were having family dinner.
Family dinner, right.
So maybe he might have responded, well, Jake's not here, so it's not really family dinner. And so she probably just took him to the friend's house and was like, you know what?
Right, this is easier than having that conversation.
Yeah. She reflected how numb she had been after Jake's death, which led to mistakes, including nearly causing harm to Siobhan. Lucky reassured her that it had been an accident and praised her as a mother. Liz confided that she didn't want the boys to feel Jake mattered more than they did, and Lucky assured her that they would always come first. They shared a moment teaching Cam how to make brownie wishes, a tradition Emily had started. Cam wished for Aiden to grow up and ride bikes with him. Liz wished for Aiden to have a long, happy life, and Lucky wished Aiden would learn to take challenges in stride while always feeling loved. As they reached for brownies, Siobhan knocked at the door. Liz invited her in for family dinner. Okay, so I'm guessing that Cam then came back from his friend's house?
I guess. Maybe they told him he could go play while dinner was finishing cooking.
True. During dinner, Liz revealed she planned to focus on her sons during her time off work. Lucky mentioned that Cam had been talking about seeing the sailboat races, and Siobhan suggested that she and Lucky take him. Liz smiled, and Lucky used the moment to check on Cam. While Lucky was away, Siobhan and Liz clashed, with Siobhan accusing Liz of trying to manipulate Lucky and using Jake's death as leverage. Liz insisted the incident in the operating room had been an accident and clarified she had no ill intentions towards Siobhan. Siobhan remained skeptical, and Liz admitted that a lawsuit might help Lucky see who Siobhan really was. Siobhan accused Liz of painting herself as a grieving mother to gain sympathy, but Liz countered that losing Jake had given her a depth of grief Siobhan couldn't comprehend. After Siobhan left, Lucky returned, and Liz explained the argument. She accused Siobhan of playing a martyr act to force Lucky into choosing between his wife and his children. Lucky clarified that he and Siobhan had wanted to explore their relationship further, and that his marriage wasn't just about keeping her in the country. Liz reminded him that Siobhan's treatment of her wasn't fair, but Lucky promised nothing would stop him from spending time with the boys. He acknowledged that interactions with Liz might cause friction, but he was committed to being present for his children. At the police station, Mac was surprised to see Lucky back at work. Lucky explained that you just told him that he couldn't leave.
Right.
When he was struggling with a personal issue, but now we're surprised he's back. Lucky explained that Siobhan was recovering and he was ready to return. Mac had concerns given Lucky's past, including Jake's death, the arson investigation, and Lucky's history with addiction, especially the narcotics linked to the hospital. Lucky insisted he could manage and persuaded Mac to let him handle a case involving missing prescription drugs. No. Despite Mac's initial plan to assign it to Dante. Yes. We follow our guts on this.
Right?
Lucky agreed to keep Mac informed every step of the way. You're not going to tell him if you pop a pill.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Lucky met Liz on the pier, expecting to discuss Siobhan potentially reinstating the malpractice lawsuit. He surprised her by explaining that Siobhan had no plans to sue and that he was investigating a prescription drug ring. Liz worried that he might be setting himself up for trouble, comparing it to Luke's past behavior, and questioned whether he had told Siobhan about the case. Lucky admitted he hadn't, but he was confident she would understand. They discussed boundaries. Liz cautioned him not to ignore warning signs and reminded him to seek her out if he felt overwhelmed. Liz agreed to help with the case when she was officially reinstated. Shortly after, Maxie stopped by the squad room looking for Mac. Lucky explained Mac wasn't around, and Maxie shared concerns about Spinelli's behavior and citation he had received for loitering during surveillance at a bakery. Lucky promised to handle it, but said he was busy with a new case and would be heading to the hospital to interview staff, including Liz. Maxie teased that it was obvious to everyone that Lucky and Liz were meant to be together, but Lucky reminded her that he was married and committed to Siobhan. Later at the hospital, Liz ran into Steve, who asked how she was doing, and moments later, Robin approached, wanting a private word to discuss her returning to work.
Liz agreed to return to work and called Audrey to watch the boys before changing into scrubs. I feel like it's not instant. Like, if you have a conversation to return to work, it's like, hey, can you start back tomorrow, not change into scrubs right now? But okay.
Right.
Robin wondered if Liz could start immediately, but Steve pulled her aside, warning it was too soon. Robin insisted Liz would only be at the nurse's station, minimizing risk. Nearby, Matt cleared Siobhan medically, but her relief vanished when she saw Liz at the station. She demanded an explanation, and Liz said the chief of staff had asked her to come back. Siobhan stormed off, frustrated and worried about what Liz's presence might mean for Lucky. At the police station, Lucky was in the middle of contacting an old drug dealer when Siobhan confronted him. She was furious that Liz had returned to work without consequences for nearly killing her during surgery. She asked if he would leave her if she reinstated the malpractice suit, reasoning that stopping Liz might save another patient. Lucky reassured her that Liz hadn't intended harm and told her that the drug investigation he was working on, explaining that Liz was helping him, but she would be stationed at the desk. Siobhan argued that the case could tempt him back into old habits and put him at risk, warning that he might turn to Liz if he faltered. Lucky insisted he was sober and committed, but Siobhan left before he could respond, worried he was putting himself in danger. I mean, I see where Siobhan's coming from. Now you have extra reason to work with your ex-wife that I already have issues with. Your ex-wife's back at the hospital after she almost killed me, and you guys are playing around with pills that we know aren't your strong suit. So,
yeah.
Steve confronted Liz at GH, telling her it was reckless to return so soon and that her involvement with Lucky's investigation made matters worse. Liz explained that she felt useful helping Lucky and intended to stick to desk duties. She recognized Siobhan's frustration, but refused to let it dictate her actions. Later, Lucky met Liz at the pier to discuss the case. He explained he planned to make a controlled purchase to trace drugs back to GH, and Liz trusted him to handle it safely, asking only that he have faith in her support. Meanwhile, Siobhan voiced her concern to Ethan, fearing Lucky might be tempted by drugs or drawn back to Liz. She admitted her loathing for Liz stemmed from their shared history, but her bigger fear was that Lucky could get hurt. Ethan promised to try to help, cautioning that Lucky's situation was risky. Back at GH, Steve asked Robin to remove Liz from staff, but she refused, citing hospital staffing needs. Steve joined Patrick and Matt venting about Robin's decision, while Ethan confronted Lucky on the docks, warning that involving Liz and pursuing the drug case could push him toward self-destruction. Lucky insisted he didn't need help and was capable of handling the investigation. Siobhan confronted Liz at General Hospital, her anger sharp as she accused Liz of being reckless. Returning to work so soon after the near-fatal accident that had almost taken Siobhan's life was, in her eyes, irresponsible. She suggested that Liz might be trying to collapse emotionally so Lucky would feel compelled to step in, even implying that if Liz couldn't have Lucky's heart in life, she might haunt it in death. Liz defended herself, saying the memory of Jake haunted her every day, and she had returned to work to feel useful, grounded, and connected to her children, and lucky not to manipulate anyone. Siobhan warned that falling back into old destructive patterns with Lucky could lead to serious consequences, especially with his sobriety and their marriage at stake. Liz argued she was learning from past mistakes and was trying to be a responsible mother and professional, supporting Lucky in a constructive way. Siobhan remained unconvinced, concerned that Liz's presence might tempt Lucky to relapse or make poor choices. Later at the pier, Siobhan confronted Lucky directly about Liz. Lucky accused her of jealousy and undermining his work, suggesting she was more concerned about keeping him away from Liz than protecting him. Siobhan argued that Liz's involvement in his investigation could destabilize him emotionally, enabling destructive behavior. Lucky insisted that Liz's support was genuine and that he could handle the risks, refusing to drop the case. Siobhan admitted she had sought Ethan's perspective because she couldn't reason with Liz directly, but Lucky maintained that he needed to take responsibility for his decisions. Meanwhile, Monica visited Jason to discuss the revelation about Jake's paternity. She expressed grief over the grandson she never got to know and the secrecy that had surrounded him. Jason explained that the family had tried to protect everyone, but the conversation highlighted the continued consequences of past tragedies and secrets, showing how Lucky, Liz, and Siobhan's lives remained shaped by loss and the challenges of moving forward. She reminded Jason that decisions made to protect everyone sometimes came at a heavy cost, and Jason admitted he had believed he was doing what was best. Monica showed him a photograph from his childhood, reflecting on the innocence and small joys of growing up and the way that loss echoed through their family. On the hospital rooftop, Liz watched the storm roll in, lightning flashing across the sky as wind whipped around her. Siobhan arrived moments later, her presence tense and sharp. Liz tried to deflect, saying she'd had enough confrontation for the day and wondered what it would take for Siobhan to leave her alone. Siobhan leaned over the ledge, her voice icy, and suggested that no one would believe it was an accident if one of them fell. Liz recoiled but didn't back down, keeping her gaze steady. The exchange was loaded with unspoken accusations. Siobhan warned Liz about her influence over Lucky, Liz silently bracing for judgment, both aware that their conflict wasn't just personal, but tied to the stakes of Lucky's sobriety and their shared children. Meanwhile, down on the piers, Lucky reached out to an old drug dealer as part of the investigation into the prescription drug ring at the hospital. The dealer handed him a bottle of hydrocodone, the very substance Lucky had once struggled with. It was a calculated risk. Lucky needed the drug as evidence to trace the ring, but the temptation of his old addiction loomed heavily over him. Every move reminded him of how close he had come to losing everything before, and how careful he needed to be to stay sober while pursuing justice. Helena confronted Lulu about the messy history between the Spencers and the Cassidines, claiming Luke had always favored Lucky over Lulu and arguing the family competition was natural. Nikolas challenged Helena, insisting she had manipulated everyone from the start, including him, using Aiden's paternity and her ongoing feud with Luke as tools. Helena warned Nikolas about the dangers of his Cassidine bloodline, urging him to embrace it, while Nikolas insisted he wanted nothing to do with her schemes. He explained to Lulu that he had left Port Charles to protect Aiden and to keep Lucky from losing another child, even if it meant hiding the truth about paternity. On the hospital rooftop, Siobhan approached Liz with deliberate, determined steps, closing the distance between them. Her eyes were fixed on Liz, sharp and unwavering. "You've been using your grief to get him, haven't you?" she asked, voice calm but edged with accusation. "Lucky's not yours to manipulate." Liz stood her ground. "Jake was my son too," she said quietly. "I loved him. This had nothing to do with Lucky." Siobhan moved even closer, deliberately invading Liz's space, letting her presence fill the rooftop. "Oh, come on. You think you can just pull him back into your arms, make him feel sorry for you? You've tried every trick in the book to get him, maybe even using Jake's memory." Liz's eyes flared. "I would never risk hurting my children or Lucky. That was an accident. I didn't put him in danger." She pressed her hands against the railing, stepping back carefully. Siobhan's gaze flickered at the edge, then back to Liz. Standing this close, don't think I don't see it. If you fell, no one would believe it was an accident. Her tone softened just enough to be chilling. Do you even care about him, or is this just about making him yours again? Liz met her stare, voice steady. I care about the children too. Lucky's part in their lives, and I trust him to make his own choices. I'm not manipulating him. Siobhan left out a bitter laugh. Maybe, but you've depended on him for so long. You used him as your safety net, your knight in shining armor, and now you're trying to pull him away from me. Liz shook her head. No, I've been standing on my own lately, handling my grief, handling my kids. I don't need Lucky to be whole. I want him to be safe. That's the difference between us. Siobhan's eyes narrowed. Lucky's not your husband. You can't just act like I don't exist. Push too hard and you'll lose him for good. Liz didn't move, letting the wind whip around them. I'm not pushing him. I'm letting him be Lucky. That means trusting him, even if it makes you uncomfortable. After the rooftop confrontation, Liz returned to the nurse's station, weighed down by the encounter. Monica appeared looking for Steve, and Liz offered to page him. Monica shared how she had sometimes gotten too close to patients, and Liz admitted she hadn't been in the pediatric wing since Jake's death 4 months earlier. Monica expressed regret at never knowing Jake and reflected on the importance of family, advising Liz not to let fear or selfishness affect Cameron and Aiden. After Monica left, Liz noticed a pamphlet on narcotic addiction, a reminder of the dangers Lucky faced. Lucky returned to his apartment after a tense day, his eyes falling on the bottle of pills the drug dealer had given him for the investigation. He quickly slipped them into his pocket as Siobhan stepped inside. She admitted she was glad he was home, and Lucky, with a hint of sarcasm, asked if she'd been worried he was out getting high. Siobhan apologized if she overstepped by speaking with Ethan, but she insisted she had every right to be concerned for him as his wife. Lucky reminded her that as a cop, taking risks, meeting with a dealer to gather information, was part of his job. When she argued that he didn't have to take on the case, he shot back that he had chosen to. Siobhan suspected he might be trying to prove he was better than Luke, but Lucky made it clear that neither Luke nor Liz had anything to do with his decision. Siobhan questioned whether he truly believed he could be around drugs without temptation. Lucky bristled at being treated like a recovering addict, insisting he was clean and determined to stay that way. Then he left the apartment, walking out into the night alone. Siobhan winced and rubbed her head.
Uh-oh.
What's going to happen next?
I don't know. I think I know, but I don't know. I mean, I thought that we were going to be done by now.
Yep, it's a surprise around every corner.
Yep. But, yeah, totally forgot that Lucky burnt down the Spencer house.
Yeah, I forgot about that too until it started talking about him playing with the lighter. I was like, oh yeah, I remember what comes next.
But it even points out again that Lucky's not like Luke.
Right. It says it repeatedly.
So,
it's ridiculous that they've made the changes they have.
Yes. But, oh well. And Aiden's still not back from his trip with his dad. So
he is not. He's going to be missing school days. He's going to get in trouble for truancy.
Yep. But join us on Monday as we recap this week's shows.
Have a good weekend.
And we'll meet you at the pier.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to go to peer54podcast.com to subscribe on your favorite platform. Don't forget to leave us a review.
And you can also follow us on many social media channels. Just search for Peer 54 Podcast. Also, we are not perfect, so if there is something that we missed or messed up, just let us know by emailing us at peer54podcast@gmail.com.